Hey, what's up, guys? Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this Go Live webinar this morning. My name is John Hogue. I'm the Director of Marketing Communications here at OWC, and I'm joined by three filmmakers and photographers who did some cool stuff in the past couple weeks, and we are going to check in with them. And I just want to have them do a quick intro. We'll start with you, Brian.
Good morning, Brian Walker. I live in beautiful South Lake Tahoe, California. And yeah, was part of this project doing the behind the scenes photo, video, and
Awesome. And
help
we
with
will.
GoPro rigging.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome. We are going to get to GoPro rigging because that's a big part of what we're talking about today. And Austin, I'll throw it over to you real quick.
Sure thing. Yeah. Austin Deweese, based in the Pacific Northwest in Olympia. And I sort of co produced and co filmed this piece for Tom, which I'm sure we'll get into with Nick.
And Nick, take it away.
Hey everyone, I am Nick. I live in Soda Springs, which is on Donner Summit, which is where everybody knows it as people eating each other. And I'm just a few miles away from that region. And yeah, we did this project together, the three of us, and I think we're making something pretty cool.
Awesome. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about what the project is. We're kind of burying the lead there. It's titled Pike's Peak Madness. We're documenting the climb. You guys joined a rookie driver for the Pike's Peak International Hill Climb. Nick, can you tell us a little bit about the project and how you got involved?
Yeah, for sure. Tom, the owner of the race car and driver, and I have been friends for like 15 years. He was actually the first person who ever paid me to do a video job a long time ago, and it was a video job that I did of Ken Block back in the day, like right on the cusp of when he started Gymkhana. Tom used to own this company called Tuner Playground, which was a blog, and so kind of ever since that day, I've been filming him doing his race thing like once a year, once every other year, and then I don't know, Austin, jump in here, but I think it was maybe 2015, right after I got my tiny home school bus, that you and I went down to Buttonwillow and filmed our first piece together of Tom. And kind of ever since then, whenever the project has come up with Tom, Austin's been right there by my side.
Yeah, it's been this cool parallel of like, as mine and Nick's careers have progressed, so has Tom's racing career. And it's just been really awesome to sort of go through those levels or steps or tiers, if you will, of like, we're just starting out. Tom's just starting out. He's figuring out, how to drive. He's overheating his engine. He's blowing stuff up, and then we're like trying to figure out how to get clients and do that whole thing. And it's just been really cool to sort of reach, in my opinion, what is kind of the pinnacle of racing. I think there's 3 or 4 major events in the world where sort of the highest stage, if you will, of racing, and I think that Pikes Peak is one of them for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, and that is a pun intended there, one of the highest stages in racing. Can we talk a little bit about the event and what the goal is, sort of from sea level to the top? Maybe Nick, you could take us through what the climb actually is.
Yeah, sure. The climb it's a hill climb. It's normally a public road. You can drive it from the bottom from nearly Colorado Springs all the way to the top, which is like 14,100 something feet. There's like 156 turns from bottom to top. It's one of the few roads that it's one of the few racetracks that a public person can go pay their 15 or 20 bucks and go drive, which I think is a very unique aspect of it. And in addition to that, it's only a racetrack one day a year, so it makes like training on it extremely complicated and difficult. It makes running it from bottom to top like equally, if not more challenging, because you literally only have one opportunity to do it per year if you get accepted, if you do all of these like checkpoints along the way. So it's a one lane road that goes one lane each direction that goes, from the bottom to the top with a ton of turns and a lot of consequence.
Very cool. And so yeah, there's a big. We'll talk a little bit about altitude and challenges that you run into as you climb this hill. But what does it look like to sort of plan and be able to cover this? I mean, you guys are 3 people here, so it seems to me like you need 75 or 80 people to cover this race properly. So what do you guys think about when you get started?
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging, of course, right? So to kind of like step back a little bit more in it is when a driver is accepted to race, which it's like a bit of a lottery system. You have to be accepted. Not anyone can go. You have to have a certain level of driving capabilities. You have to have been with your car for so long. There's a variety of checklists that Pikes Peak of themselves actually run through. Some folks don't get accepted for multiple years, and maybe they will. Or if you've only done Pikes Peak and you haven't done like any additional wheel to wheel or something like that, you might get dropped. So getting in is like kind of the first hurdle of the whole thing, and then to kind of like go the next step, the practicing is all it's broken up into 3 stages. We have bottom, middle, top. So like for example, our first day of practice on race week was the middle section, right? Or was it the upper? The upper? Okay. Upper section. Okay, yeah. So I was in yeah, I was thinking the other one. I was in the pits that day, and then Brian and Austin went up to the top section. So I was filming in the pits, and they went up on the top. You wake up at like 3:30 in the morning, something like that. You're driving up by 4. The track is hot at like 5 or 5:15, and the light has barely come up. So the drivers are working, on the car in the dark, getting in the car like nearly in the dark, and as soon as the light has crested, they're like going up. They break it so each section is chunked up into 3 sections, and the entire quantity of racers is also chunked up in the sections. So there's like 20 or so cars doing the upper, and then at the same time, there's 20 or so cars doing the middle, and then 20 or so cars doing the bottom, all simultaneously at the same time, right? So you go from the bottom the bottom of your section to the top of your section. All 20 go up. You turn around, you come down, and you repeat the process as many times as you can until 8:30. So for Austin and Brian, they had to get up, park their car in a place that they felt was appropriate or a nice place for them to be able to move around. Granted, keep in mind they're at like 13,500 feet, right? So they're like carrying their heavy backpacks, their tripods, their gear, these gigantic lenses, like all of these things at 13,000 feet. Everybody rips, they get their shots, and then they have to essentially race to another location, which could be a turn, 2 turns, 3 turns away. And anyone who's been at altitude can understand that that's challenging. And then anyone who's been at altitude with a large backpack and hustling can really understand how hard that could be.
And they're pretty early mornings too, which I know like filmmakers love to do early mornings. But what's the normal wake up call for Pikes Peak practice day or a race day?
I mean, let's let Brian or Austin jump in on kind of that stuff.
Well, since we started at the top section, Austin and I got to sleep in little bit longer, which was great. Nick had to wake up early since he was going to the pits, but typical wake up time was 2:30. Race day is a little bit earlier because everything is staged out of the bottom and they work their way up, and they close the road down at 5, so people can't go up higher. So you have to be at your section by 5 a.m. For the training days, it was a little bit more relaxed. Relaxed as in you got to sleep an extra hour. You didn't have to sleep in a car. So we were doing 3:30, wake up or head to the hill to get to the top, and then yeah, go from there.
I want to interrupt and note that I need like 45 to 60 minutes between wake up and my ability to move at those hours. And Austin's around the same as me, and Brian's like 2.5 minutes. We're like, man, is Brian gonna make it? And then like all of a sudden he's up with his backpack and he's just like a light switch.
That's awesome. That's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask who deals with sleep deprivation the best of the group, but it sounds like it's Brian. Brian wins. He's just drinking water, staying
100%.
hydrated. That's awesome. All right, let's move into equipment and gear. This is called cameras and coffee tentatively right now. So what were we out there shooting with? And we can start with you, Brian, in the behind the scenes world.
For the behind the scenes, I was shooting for stills and video. For video, I was shooting on the Canon C70, and then for stills was running the Canon R5.
Awesome. Very cool. Austin, what were you working with?
Yeah, I shoot. It's funny, you're going to get all the major brands represented here, but I shoot on Sony. And so for stills and mainly time lapse, I shoot on the Sony A1. And then for video stuff, I was shooting on the Sony FX6.
Very cool. And Nick, what rig were you working with out there?
So
If
I
you have a picture of
run,
that. So
yeah, I run a red Komodo X. And I don't really think any of the three of us necessarily have brand loyalty. I think it's more of just like these work for us. These are the tools that work for us. And Austin and I were running the Atlas Anamorphics, the Orions, the 2X. And I also run a Canon R5 for stills and ran it for some time lapses as well. And then, of course, we loaded up the car with GoPros. And then, since we're on a OWC Tech Talk, we were running all of the fastest OWC cards that you guys have to offer. And then, of course, all of the fastest drives that you guys had to offer. So that's how we were moving all of everything that we were capturing over.
nice. That's yeah, that was gonna be my next conversation. Shout out to all the folks that help support this trip. If there's anybody, Nick, that you wanted to shout out, now's a good time to talk about some partners that were involved.
Yeah, for sure. OWC was kind of the backbone of this. Like we love our relationship with you guys, and Brian's the reason why we have an introduction to you in general. So thank you, Brian. Kondor Blue supplied us with the cages and things like that. Oh, it's downstairs. Never mind. Which you can see in the pictures. And then Rocky Talkie had us on some communication stuff like that. And yeah, GoPro also supported us with a few GoPros, and which did get a little bit damaged, as to be expected.
Let's quickly talk about some GoPro rigging because that's the way you can put cameras in places that don't require people to be manning them. So, Brian, do you want to jump in here and talk about some GoPro rigging and where we place these cameras?
Yeah, so we had some basic ideas for the GoPros. There's always your standard helmet mount, as you can see. Um, Nick and Austin, they got some great stuff during the practice week, and then wanted to mix it up, get something a little different. We had your standard one on the front splitter, correct, Nick? Splitter?
Yep, splitter.
Yep.
Here's the
And
front.
then front splitter up on top of Tom's helmet, one on the back, facing towards the back of the car, towards the wing. And then we had a 360 GoPro Max mounted inside the car to give a nice variation of angles that we could use. And then there's a few different unique ideas that we did where we had one mounted up in the wheel well of the car, showcasing like the suspension, because even though it is a flat road, it is surprisingly very bumpy. And there's a lot of different movements that you'll see with the car as they climb the hill. The road was only paved 12 years ago, 15 years ago, I think. Before that, the road was completely dirt. So that was a dirt road race, and now it's paved, and there it still shows how bumpy it is. And then we had a couple of unique mounts off the back of the wing. We had one sticky mounted off the side that stuck out looking down the entire passenger side of the car. And then another one where we had to really configure the mount up on the front splitter to get the camera out in front of the wing to showcase the front tire and the driver's side, so you could really see that tire articulating and things like that.
That's awesome. I'm really excited to see some of this footage. I know we have some feature film around it and some BTS coming because of all your hard work, and can't wait to see some of those shots because the that climb is treacherous and really exciting to watch someone drive up. So if there's a GoPro hanging off the side there, I'm here for it. Um, all of this stuff, all of this footage is a lot of data. There's a lot of GoPros, there's Sonys, there's Reds, there's Canons. How did you guys deal with the data, and how much data were you capturing on sort of a daily basis?
I can jump in with that one since I did a majority of the DIT. We used the dual SD card reader that OWC offers because we had quite a few SD cards. We had like 5 or so GoPros running almost every single run. We had 5 or so Tentacle Sync microphones that also run on SD. And then in addition to that, we had Brian's 2 cards, sometimes his 3 with his drone. I had 2 cards. Austin had 2 cards. So we had a lot. I don't remember what the total data was. Austin, feel free to jump in here, but I want to say it was like 6 terabytes or something like that. But the entire DIT workflow from when we got back each day to being done was like over an hour and a half, even with all of the fastest stuff that we can have.
Yeah, so Austin, can you jump in there a little bit? I know it's sort of, we always talk that you're a little bit more on the technical side of things. So how did the OWC gear support sort of quicker turnarounds and get you to bed at like what, 4 p.m. so you could wake up at 2?
Yeah, I wish it was 4 p.m. Yeah. I'll say that, in a normal production setting, I feel like, the DIT happens after you wrap or even throughout the day, and you sort of have the time and availability to be able to dump cards and sort of organize footage, and maybe even go in and do an assembly of the project so you can, double check shots. And where I think when I was younger and started to get into the business, my grandfather, he's a union electrician. He always says, just like buy the best stuff you can, buy the fastest thing you can. As photographers and videographers, we sit and get paid to watch, loading and render bars all day. And so if you're waiting on a slow computer or a slow file transfer or, just any sort of waiting, like just like in the hiking backpacking community, ounces are pounds are pains, like seconds are pain, and every second literally counts when you're, for example, I'll give you an example from our trip. We didn't have the luxury to get back to, the Airbnb right after we got off the mountain at, 9 or 10. We had to, we sometimes we were able to go back to the Airbnb and dump and DIT footage, but then we were right back out on the road going down into Colorado Springs to film sort of what we termed extracurricular activities, which would have been like tech talks happening with BMW Winslow Springs or Fan Fest, or, there are other events that we were, I don't want to use the term obligated, because from a creative perspective, we felt, and this is an example of one of them. This is a walk around tech talk video that Tom did with, 30-time Pikes Peak driver Clint Vaschholtz. But, we had other content that we needed to capture to help tell the entire story. And so we were coming off the mountain, dumping cars really quickly. I'll make another note too, because our cameras, I always see like after you hit stop record, like that data becomes instantly vulnerable, right? Like you're either going to, you could drop your camera, it could get crushed, something could happen to it. You drive into town, it could get stolen out of the back of the car. Like as soon as you hit stop recording and you only have one copy of that piece of data, like it's instantly vulnerable. So I'm always like in a rush to make sure that it gets double backed. And we were actually triple backing on this trip. But I'd say that, the goal was to, as Nick shared, we had probably 15 to 20 cards every day we came off the mountain that we needed to back, because we were also backing up all of Brian's footage, all the GoPros, all the Tentacle syncs, both of our cameras. And so the faster that we can get that data on a drive and get it double backed, like the less stressed we have to be when we go down to downtown Colorado Springs to FanFest, for example, and there's thousands of people walking around. Like we're not worried about saving the footage from that morning's run up the mountain.
Awesome. Yeah, that's filmmaking's hard enough. And then filmmaking on Pikes Peak is even harder. So don't add any more stress, right?
No, definitely not. And I'll say that, being able to typically, like, I think what people fail to realize sometimes is that potentially there's a bottleneck, right? From capture to storage. And sometimes that bottleneck can be your card speed. Sometimes that bottleneck could be your card reader. Sometimes that bottleneck could be, the drive that you're moving it to. Sometimes the host computer that you're using. But knowing that we had the fastest cards in the industry, the fastest readers in the industry, and we're using, super fast Thunderbolt 4. It was just awesome to sit there in DIT and literally like we couldn't even start a transfer and like go and take a shower and come back. Like the footage was already done transferring as soon as we stepped away from the computer, literally. So it was like Nick would sit down and start a transfer and then go and take a shower. And then while I was sitting there like live editing, because I was doing some assembly on site, I would look over at the computer and it would already be done. It's like, oh, okay, I better jump in and like start the next transfer. So like we couldn't even keep up with how fast things were moving. And that is, I think, the goal, to have the technology work for you in such a way that it's kind of waiting on you. It's waiting on your input.
I love that. That's exactly what we're trying to achieve all the time is sort of get out of the way and just be able to get back to telling stories and doing the thing that you love and, make sure that the technology is out of the way for sure. Speaking of speed, let's talk about the car and the driver and some Nick, these are some fun shots of you hanging out the window of a car. I'm assuming this is on a practice day, but how did Tom and the team do? And were you guys able to capture what you set out to?
Yeah, I mean, Tom did really good. He showed up as a rookie team, which I think there was something like 20 or maybe a little over 20 rookies this year out of the 60-ish cars, something along that. Don't quote me, but it was, around those numbers. He did really good as a rookie. I mean, I think he assembled what I think is a really good team, both on the video photo side and also on like the actual team side, right? Between the engine tuner, the shop that built it, the mechanics that were on site, Tom as a C-level exec at a tech company, being able to like manage and oversee the entire project the whole time. So yeah, I mean, they did really, really good. We showed up as a rookie team, and I think like what he did as a race driver and what we're going to produce as filmers, is going to make a bit of a splash in this world of Pikes Peak. More than I think most rookies show up and do.
And I want to make a comment too about that, like piggybacking off of Nick's last comment about, kind of showing up as rookies. There are other, obviously, because of the notoriety of the race and just the level at which it's at, there are other drivers and other content creation teams that are following along with these drivers, and so uh, I I think that the way in which we approach capturing the project came from more of like a cinematic standpoint. There's only so many ways that you can shoot the race. It's the same course every single year. It's been happening for over 100 years. It's really hard to find super unique ways to capture what's happening here. And being a non-factory sponsored on a non-factory sponsored team makes it even more challenging because there are other teams like Ford, for example, that go out there and they're able to shut down the entire mountain for a whole day. And then their content teams have bottom to top access of just their vehicles. So they can take drones, FPV drones out there. They can, put guys in sort of maybe not as safe places to capture cool content. They have more runs to use GoPro footage from. And, we only got those 3 practice runs up the mountain. Actually, due to weather, we only got really 1. And then the full run top, bottom to top. So I will say that it felt like we were all in this rookie status, but we were sort of like punching way above our weight class with the cameras, the content, the storytelling, the cards that we were using, the drives. Like we felt so prepared. And I hope that when everybody watches the film, they can see that too.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I think it does look that way, and it seems like the time. I think what was the exact time that Tom finished the race in? About 10 minutes, which is, I think, a good 10:31, and a good goal for a rookie driver. I think Nick, you mentioned, was about 12 minutes. So to beat that time by 2 minutes, and to have you guys out there filming, it seems like it was a successful mission. Mission completed. Uh, that's very exciting stuff, and we are really looking forward to seeing the film. Brian, I think Austin and Nick have been out there before. Brian, was this your rookie year on Pikes Peak, or am I getting that wrong?
Yeah, this was my first time there, and I'd heard about it, seen plenty of videos of it, and it was really cool. It's definitely a unique side of car racing to see. I've spent years since I was a little kid. I've been going to Baja and watching like the Baja 1000, so I've seen all the heavy hitters of off-road racing, and then to step into this side of uh, car racing was really really cool to see, and very similar, but uh, super fun and a unique experience.
And I think something, John, that's pretty cool too is that I picked up a camera because I was building a race car, and Brian also. I'm gonna fluff him up here a little bit. He started shooting photography because of the Baja 1000 races, so it's kind of neat to kind of come full circle between the two of those. Not to discredit Austin's also love for cars, but You know, I mean, why two of us picked up a camera? So it's cool to like sort of full circle that.
Well, I think that's the conversation that we always have, sort of, is like, why do we do this? What is photography or filmmaking? What is the real sort of baseline inspiration for it? And it sounds like it's just surrounding yourself with something you love, quite frankly, and capturing it and sort of like putting it in a little bottle. If I could catch time in a bottle. So let's talk about future plans for you guys and for the team. We can start to think about next year. What's the results of the race are in 10/31. Is Tom going back, and are you guys going back?
Yeah, sure. As you mentioned before, like the goal was to have fun, don't die, put down a respectable time, and Tom did all of those things successfully. It went from sub 12 to sub 11, and then he finished the race at 10:31. So yeah, he's caught the proverbial Pikes Peak bug. He's definitely going back next year, and we are. And I think will always and have always been, his sidekicks to capture the content of him living his dream and racing. So yeah, we're excited to go back. We're excited to see what's in store. The guys have already been working on the car. I was texting Tom the other day because he got to the top and instantly he started thinking like, what can I do better? Like how can we improve the car? He hit 10:31. Now he's like, could we do sub 10? Is it possible? And because of one of his sponsors, AIM Sports, he knows that he can look at the times from bottom to top of all the sort of segments that he's done, and the data shows that a sub 10 is potentially possible. So yeah, we're fast and furious loading the car up with some nitrous and hoping that that'll give him some more power in the upper section where you lose most of the power because of the altitude. And yeah, we're going to be back next year. So the sort of primary goal is to take this E46 back, but we have some maybe other ideas up our sleeve. I'll let maybe Nick touch on those.
Well, I mean, he's a fully self-funded race car driver, almost entirely fully self-funded. I mean, I think he gets a little bit of funds from his sponsors, but a lot of people are supporting Tom, and yeah, I'm opening the topic to anyone that wants to support Tom, whether it be financially, products, whatever. Marlboro, like you'd probably put your cigarette brand on it. Whoever, Wonder Bread right across the windshield.
So that's a good point. I was going to say, we know what Tom would do next year. We're going to put nitrous on the car. We can't put nitrous on cameras. I don't think it would do anything. But what would you guys do differently next year? So what have you learned from this one? And Brian, maybe we can start with you since it was your first.
Ooh, what would I change for next year? What would I add to improve? Unfortunately, my bag's going to get a lot heavier because I think I need more cameras.
Nice. More cameras, which is more
It's going to
memory
involve,
cards.
yeah, it's going to involve more cameras, more memory cards, more batteries, and more data. Yeah, essentially, it's going to be taking more cameras and setting a camera locked off somewhere or on a remote slider, or run down the hill and set another camera in another spot, and yeah, try to get as many angles as possible. I know this year was especially tough. The first day of practice was great. We had great weather, great conditions. Second day of practice, it was a little dark and rainy, or starting to rain. The top two sections were fully canceled. The following day was completely canceled for weather. And then when we finally got back for our final day of practice, it was, at least on the road driving up, was full fog, pretty much full pinball, as you would say, like in ski world and such. You could maybe see 10 feet ahead of you, 50-mile-an-hour winds, raining, super, super dangerous conditions to drive. So they had big delays for everything, and they only ended up running maybe 2 or 3 laps up to the top. So all you get are 2 shots essentially of the car coming by. So yeah, trying to get more cameras positioned, more unique angles if possible, and yeah, be prepared for more bad weather.
Nice. More rain gear. That sounds like
Yeah,
really
had
helpful.
plenty, but could always use more.
Nice. Austin, what would you do different next year?
Oof. Yeah. I will say on race morning, Nick and I sat in the car attempting to sleep, um, but we're both on our phones in our notes app, like just writing down, things that we would do differently. Um, I'll maybe come at it from a technical standpoint. Um, I'd love to have uh, matching cameras, um, only for the reason of like Nick's shooting on Super 35 with the Komodo, and I'm shooting on full frame with the FX6. So it made it a little bit more challenging for me to shoot on the Orions because they are meant for Super 35. That being said, I did shoot with a 1.6 expander to be able to film my full frame sensor, but um, just for ease of use, I probably would want to shoot on the same cameras. And we took a different approach of like we could have shot. Sony is known for their autofocus. It works amazingly well. We could have gone with native glass and shot everything with autofocus, as a lot of people do in the sports worlds these days. But we chose to make the piece more cinematic and shoot on anamorphic. And we really appreciate Atlas, you guys connecting us with Atlas, and Atlas supporting us on this project. Though it was challenging to 180-degree focus throws really hard, trying to capture you know the mountain, which is tall, on wide angle lenses. Like, it's perfect for the car because it's wide, but like from a technical perspective, it was challenging. And then mixing that footage with non-anamorphic footage, so mixing it with time lapse and things like that. I tried to shoot more time lapse on my FX6 with the anamorphic glass so that it could kind of match. But um so I think from that perspective, we'd probably switch it up, whether I shoot on Komodo or maybe we shoot on Sony's, or I'm not super sure yet. I'm sure there'll be new cameras dropping between now and then. But again, like Nick said earlier, like we're not fanboys. Maybe we are a little bit, but we're not like tied into any specific brand per se. We'll pick the best brand that's going to work like for the project that we're shooting. I shoot a lot of corporate stuff here back home, so having native autofocus that works really well, eye tracking, all that stuff, like, is just kind of a no-brainer for me. Nick being on red totally makes sense for him because a lot of the action sports industry is on red, and having matching cameras is important there. So yeah, we learned a lot. I'd say cameras is one thing, and then probably like crewing up a little bit more, having an on-site editor. When you're trying to edit a reel for Tom at 6, 7, 8 p.m. at night, but you know that you got to get up in 4 or 5 hours, it's kind of tough. So having an on-site editor that could sort of assemble and put together footage while we were up on the mountain, and then do the DIT for us and stuff like that, just kind of offload. I think that's probably something we'd change too.
Awesome. That's great. Maybe we'll get you some focus pullers if you're still on anamorphics next year. Nick, why don't you take us out here? I think anything that you would do different next year, and what were your takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, they both hit some really amazing topics and definitely checked off a couple of boxes Austin and I made on race day when we couldn't sleep in the car. I think identifying like how important is getting content footage out for Tom and for his race team and for his sponsors, like, identifying like, does that matter for the people that are supporting him, or is it something that we just want and need to do and feel like this external pressure because other people are doing it? And then like identifying if that is the case, like how do we, make that more efficient? So, I think one of the main things would be like an on-site editor. I think an on-site editor would take what we're doing now with our current editor, him going through 5 hours of interview footage and being completely blind to like the project as a whole, where if there's an on-site editor there, like we could come home and be like, hey, this happened, and he can write up his own little notes of what it is. I would have loved to hand off like an entire a daily sheet list to our editor, but like we're just so slammed with so many things. We weren't able to even get to that. Like, really coming home was like, make sure we have everything backed up, and then let's format everything so we don't double write over anything tomorrow, and then we're like double copying stuff tomorrow night or whatever. So it was like a really rigorous process there. I mean, I would love to get a little bit more creative with the shots. Austin's really good at like pre-production, and I'm maybe a little more lackluster and like kind of more run and gun in that sense. So like doing some more e-scouting, finding some more locations, hiking up further distances instead of just being on the side of the road with like everyone else, things like that, and I think I'd be, thrilled to be like mounting real cameras inside or on the car, things like that, as much as I love like the convenience of a GoPro, like I want this to be like car commercial level quality that we're putting out, a little more so than like social media quality. But I think we just kind of need to identify like where the value is for everybody and like, how does this all work together?
Excellent stuff. Well, we have a year or so to continue to partner with you guys and try to make the next one even better than what we're looking forward to seeing here. And excited to see this edit. We're excited to see the BTS. Thank you guys so much for joining us. You guys you're a small but mighty team. Look at those smiles right there. Three gents making cool stuff on the side of a hill with fast cars. What more could you ask for? Thank you so much for joining, and we will see you soon. And stay tuned here on OWC socials for the final product that we've been talking about today. Thanks so much, Brian. Nick, and
Awesome.
it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
John.
Appreciate it, John.